Hello and welcome to the world-famous Driving You Crazy podcast. This is the show where we talk about all things transportation, anything that gets you from here to there. I'm the traffic anchor and the transportation reporter for Denver 7 News, Jason Luber. If you would like to be a part of the show, you can always contact me on any of the contact links in the description of the fine program, or you can call the listener hotline at 303-832-0217. And you never know what you're going to hear before you leave your message. Anyway, how often do you wash your car? Do you do it yourself or do you go somewhere? The gas station, the self-wash, the full-service place? Well, I wash my car more often in the wintertime than the summer because all that road salt and the goop that gets splashed up on your car and under the car, I want to get all of that stuff off. But you can't do that in all places in the country. Denver's a little bit more unique in that way, where we do have some decent weather during the wintertime to wash your car. Now, I've never explored this topic of car washing in depth, and since, car washes are transportation related, it's perfect for this show. So I invited Christian Seam. He's the Chief Stores Officer of Spotless Brands, basically representing a group of several car washes, including Cobblestone, Okie Express, Flagship, and Ultimate Shine, to be here on the show. Christian, thanks so much for being here on the world-famous Driving You Crazy podcast.
Hey, thanks so much, Jason. I really appreciate the opportunity. Looking forward to our conversation here today.
All right, Christian, before we get into the car wash business, I really want to know how you got into the car wash business. I doubt this is something as you were a kid, 10, 12 years old, going, man, I can't wait to work in the car wash industry.
It's funny you say that. I have actually been in retail, both consumer goods and the service side, my entire career. And for the last 15 years or so, I have been in the aftermarket automotive space. And I'll just tell you kind of a quick aside, I made a transition right out of consumer electronics during the recession and said, there's a big dynamic between, being in a business where, you sell what people want and what people need. And so when you look at, consumer electronics, hey, I want that big screen, but I don't need it. But I need to ensure that I'm taking care of my vehicle. For many people, it's their second largest investment, behind their house. And so I started out in auto parts and was there running a couple of hundred locations for an organization, Advanced Auto Parts. And then from there transitioned into the service side, where I was running over 750 auto repair locations across the U.S. under the National Tire brand and Tire Kingdom, and then got into car washing. It was kind of funny, Jason, because that joke that says, Jason, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Right.
My answer was always, I want to get into car wash, and the opportunity came up a couple of years ago. And certainly have really enjoyed the ride. So was prior to this, worked for an organization, ICWG, saw that to a transaction, and then started out with Spotless Brands 2.5 years ago. Jason, we had 24 locations in one state, and now we are pushing 150 in 11 states. So we've seen a real Herculean amount of growth, and really proud of the team and the leaders that have been able to leverage that.
Yeah, and as you said, it has to be somewhat recession-proof because people always have their cars and they are always getting dirty. And I've always thought you want to be in an industry where people need to have things done. They're always going to have their hair cut. They're always going to need toilet paper. They're always going to need to eat. They're probably going to always need to wash their car.
100%. To your point, when you look at the cost of vehicle ownership right now, it averages about $941 a month. So said differently, that's about $11,300 a year. Now, you take into account, your payment, you take into account, the cost to service it. And again, I'll go back to the point just made, right, around the size of that investment. People want it to look good. And so when you think about the service level that we are out there offering, we are definitely seeing a transition away from that DIY, that do it yourself. Just think about this, right? The last time you drove down the streets of your neighborhood, how often can you remember seeing somebody out there with a hose and a sponge and a bucket washing their own car? It's
only once that, because my neighbor Ned Flanders basically is the same. He's a total Ned Flanders, and he does wash his car by hand every single week.
That's right.
But he's the only one. He's the only one.
He's the only one, right?
Yeah.
So we all know that guy, but it's kind of like oil change, right? If I can go and I can buy an oil change and do it myself for $29.99 or for $39.99, I can have it done professionally. I mean, so it's the same thing. For us, we try and really rally around a couple of things, right? We want to make sure that we're outputting a car that's clean, dry, shiny, and we want to do it quickly. We want to do it fast. And that just really is seen as a very positive in the eyes of our customers that count on us across all of our brands that you referenced at the front side of today.
I would think that you would have most of your competition. Obviously, there's other the self car washing places where you drive your car through and, it does its thing. We'll talk more about that in a bit. But I would think most of your competition comes from the little booths where it's just a building with 4 or 5 holes and you drive in and you get the sprayer and you get your magic wand brush and you're doing it yourself. That has to be probably your only competition, right?
I have to tell you that's a great question because, we look out over the hood and, you say to yourself, well, there's a lot of building and construction that's going on for these express tunnels because they represent, speed, convenience, location, and all the things we discussed. The primary, right, has been historically your self-serve bays. And then what you just referenced, Jason, which is we call it an in-bay automatic. So, your car is stationary and the equipment goes around it. Whereas with ours, our tunnels are, pulling the vehicle through various stages of the wash where the brushes and the chemicals can react in a real positive outcome for the customer. And ideally, it's going to take, roughly 3 minutes. And then we offer optionality from us finishing it, the interior to the customer doing it themselves. And we're seeing a large amount of customers that want that optionality in the markets that we play in. And so we try and intersect both of those. But you definitely have an over-indexed amount of in-bay automatics that just frankly don't do the job that customers really expect. And once they come through a car wash like an express tunnel, the difference there really is none to compare to. And so we are capturing a greater share of customers that didn't have that optionality in the past.
My guest is Christian Seam. He's the Chief Stores Officer for Spotless Brands, group of several car washes, including Cobblestone, with locations both here in Colorado and down in Arizona. Speaking of all these different kind of car washes, there are all kinds of the different ones, and when I go to one, whether it's yours or somebody else's, I don't know exactly what I'm going to be getting into when I get into that a little groove that's going to and the little ball that's going to be pushing my car along the way. Some of the brushes are rubber, and some are nylon, and some are cloth, and some look like plastic. Is there one better for cleaning than another, and one maybe that is less damaging to the car's paint than another?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jason. There's a variety of different brushes that we use. And so in the express car wash industry, which are the tunnels that we just described versus the other formats, there's several different types and materials that we use. And depending on the application, in some cases, it comes down to preference based on the type of dirt that you're actually cleaning off a vehicle. And so I'll elaborate a little bit more. So, if I look, vehicle comes in and we engage with wheel brushes. Now, these are very coarse, typically longer bristled nylon brushes. These are specifically designed to hit that wheel and that tire where that dirt and that brake dust, really, builds up. So they are built and designed to only make contact with this area. So the stiffness of the bristles doesn't risk or even contact any of the rest of the vehicle's finish, but it is necessary to remove that dust, that grime, and it starts loosening up a lot of that gunk in that wash process. Next, it moves to side wraps. Now, these are vertical spinning brushes. We use either neoprene or felt cloth, and they're used to clean the front, the sides, and the back of the vehicle. All of our car washes have at very minimum 1 set, most 2, and some 3. It depends on a couple of factors, Jason, from the tunnel length, to again the area, and again it cleans the front, the back. Those are typically the more difficult areas within a tunnel to clean. The more we have, the better the process. And then we go to a top brush. Now, these are horizontal spinning brushes. These are used to clean the hood, the roof, the trunk of the vehicles, If it's a pickup truck, I'll say, right, typically these brushes will retract when passing over that truck bed. We do this just because not just to safety reasons, but there's always, no matter what, we always want to ensure a clean bed, but there's typically some small debris, and we want to make sure that that the material used for these brushes is doing the job that it needs to without getting too deep and flinging up some of that debris. And then you've got mitter cloths, and so mitters are used as either a substitute, or they're used in parallel with the top brush I just mentioned. So these are long rectangular sections of soft woven cloth, and I'd ask you to think about like pile carpet.
Right.
They move back and forth, or they move side to side over the car as it's going through the cleaning process. They typically move at a much lower speed than that spinning top brush. And they are really designed, I'll say, to kind of mimic that hand wash that Ned Flanders does out in the driveway, right? And then finally, you go through tire shine brushes. These are at the end of the process. They are short bristled. They're medium to coarse nylon brushes, and they're used to apply a tire dressing to that cleaned wheel right at the end of the wash. They're coarse on purpose. It ensures that they last for a very long time, and they do not risk scratching the finish due to their very low placement to the ground. So they won't touch any part of the vehicle itself. And I'll say this, Jason, just a quick note about I've been talking about the neoprene and the felt, right? So felt, if I break it down, does a great job in the cleaning process because it absorbs a lot of those cleaning agents, and that helps ensure a real thorough application to the cars it's going through. But the durability, frankly, it's fairly short, depending on our volume, and volume is car count, all right, in our world. So depending on the volume, it can last anywhere between 6 to 9 months. Where you get into neoprene, this is more the standard today in the wash industry. This material is designed, it's very slick, and it does not catch dirt and or debris, and it's got a much greater longevity. Depending on volume, again, you can get 1 to 2 years out of this. And so while it's not as absorbent as the felt I mentioned, today's wash chemicals and what we use in our formulation and their ability to adhere to the vehicle itself, that really eliminates the issue, and we are able to deliver a very clean vehicle, and again, clean, dry, shiny, and we can do it quickly.
But that felt, if it's already absorbed the first car, and then my car comes through next, and then the next one next, I mean, it's car after car after car, so it's not like I have a chance to wring it out and then rinse it with regular water. I mean, it's just getting the same chemicals over and over and over, and it's just totally soaked, absorbed all those chemicals, and then just keeps going from one car to the next.
It does, and two things I'll say. So one is that actually helps in the process when you think about the chemicals, and there's different parts of the process you want those chemicals to stay on the vehicle a little bit longer, and then other components where you want that off. So in this case, it's a real benefit because that soap and those chemicals that are activating with the dirt and the grime that's on the vehicle, it helps in that process. The second thing is that we have a very strict process that starts out on a day-to-day basis in the morning, depending on volume, midday, and then at close, where we'll go through and inspect all the brushes, we'll inspect all the motors to ensure that all of that equipment is operating the way that it should. So there's no part of that process in the tunnel that's being compromised. Doesn't do anybody any good if Jason takes his car through and there's a part of the wrap that needed to be replaced on the left side of the car, and it comes out super clean on the right. Yeah. We're very very focused and vehement about our standard operating procedures and ensuring that we are providing a consistency to that customer experience and that it's predictable, consistent, and clean.
My guest is Christian Seam, the Chief Stores Officer of Spotless Brands, talking about car washes and how they work. It has to be really either maddening or frustrating or maybe somewhere in between to try to figure out all the different makes and models of cars and SUVs and then be able to clean all the nooks and crannies. I have a Chevy Volt, and on the back of it, it has this little weird lip on the back, so it never cleans perfectly right under that thing or on the back of the car. And I'm sure it's like that in a lot of different vehicles.
It is. There is no. I'll call it a magic bullet, Jason. I think if there was one supreme answer here within the industry, everybody would be using that. But to your point, different designs, makes, models, years, lengths of vehicle, widths of vehicle, and then couple that, as I said earlier, with what type of dirt am I cleaning? Right? Arizona is certainly a different climate and a different dirt than you'll find in Oklahoma City, right, where it's more of that red clay and requires some different steps in the process. For us, we want to provide the optionality so that we are doing as much and all the work that we can in that tunnel. But then post tunnel, when the customer exits, and we've got the vacuums that are lined up for their use. We also provide a litany of options there, ranging from some cloth that they can finish drying, maybe that cowl that you're discussing right there, where it'll come out 97-98% dry, but hey, this is how we help get the rest of the way there, as well as compressed air that people like to use to clean out the cracks and blow the trash right out of the car in the hard to reach places, and then finally glass and interior cleaner options as well. So I think customers really appreciate that. And you've got some that, and I'm not one of these, I'll just say, Jason, that keep a very clean car. And so the need to use the inside isn't as much.
Right.
And then you got people like me and that, my gosh, certainly I'm not the model of keeping the interior clean, right? There's typically French fries crushed in between the seats, etc. So I like the optionality, as do a lot of our customers.
It's like if I was talking to somebody who owns several McDonald's, and then they just like to go to Chick-fil-A all the time.
There you go.
You have there's also obviously you're talking about the brushes and all that stuff, but you have, maybe not you guys, but there are the touchless ones as well. And I think they're mainly at gas stations. I never like those because I don't think they wash as good as something touching the car, a scrubber like we've been talking about. Like when you're washing your dishes, you don't just sit it under the water. You got to use a brush of some sort to get the stuff off.
You bring up a great point. Friction is critical in the cleaning process, as is the right chemical mix, and then ensuring you've got a good balance of both. To your point, in a process that is completely touchless, it is depending on a frictionless environment. It is that in-bay automatic typically that you just described. And it is, high pressure water, chemicals, and a high pressure rinse. And then, most people come out like to your point, Jason, and they're not really that happy. Right. When you don't introduce some of those components that really require friction, whether it be on the wheels, you're not going to get baked on brake dust off of a metal wheel just by high pressure rinse. I mean, many have tried, but again, that optionality in an in-bay automatic, it's really incomparable. We don't look at that as an analog from a comparison perspective if I look at an in-bay automatic versus any of the tunnels themselves. And that's industry standard. It's not just for Spotless.
And I think you mentioned this briefly there, but there are all kinds of things, as you said, from Arizona to Oklahoma to here in Colorado to Tennessee to New England. But there's all kinds of different things that can get stuck to your car. Not only just the chemicals and the road grime and the oils that are on the roads, but there's bird poop and tree sap and all kinds of different crap, right? There has to be some kind of a special mix of soaps and solvents that probably work better than others. And I wonder if you have like a lab that you're testing all these different things, saying, well, this one is going to work, or we have a special, super special chemical formula now that is going to clean every car perfectly.
Yeah. So let me back up a step, because to your point, you talked about kind of that road grime and just the goop that gets on your car in general. And I, listen, it happens, from a seasonal perspective. There's regionality dynamics to it. But, outside, I think for most customers, just the poor aesthetics and the threat of somebody writing "wash me" on the filth that builds up on the car, right? There's a ton of different things that can have a deteriorating effect on your car's finish. And I mean, I can rattle off a couple of examples, but here we came out of a pretty rough fall, right? And when leaves fall and they're damp and they hit your car, they leach out acidic tree sap. And it's this sap that ultimately can damage, as an example, the surface of the vehicle, to the point of staining it. One of the reasons why leaves contain tannins, and those tannins dye the surface if left unchecked of that vehicle's finish on a permanent basis. There's a ton of other stain examples, Jason, but I mean, you already said bird droppings, what we like to call, bug impacts. Okay. Right. But we all know what that is, right? They're obviously going to have, the same impact and effect in a vehicle's exterior. Failing to act, reasonably quickly to get this goop off, it will over time absolutely have an impact on that vehicle's finish. So when you think about how we get that off, and is there a magic chemical mix? We're constantly working with our vendor partners to ensure that we've got the right mix based on the geographic, the regionality, the seasonality, and ensuring that we've got the right combination of the various surfactants and a lot of those chemicals that have different pH levels that really do the hard work in the vehicle cleaning, along with the brushes I described. So I'm going to break down a few just in the chemical process overall, right?
Sure.
When Jason comes in the tunnel, the process starts with a pre-soak application, and this is typically a higher pH product, and it is designed and formulated to loosen some of that stubborn dirt that we talked about. And it is this alkalinity of the product that is counteracting with things like the acidity of that tree sap that I just talked about, or that bug impact, or that residue, right? Left over from, the bird poop and a lot of those other things that'll stain the vehicles. And then we hit the wheels, and these are typically sprayed out in 2 steps. First, we have specially formulated high pH chem that also loosens, I mentioned earlier, that brake dust, that road grime. And then we followed up with a low pH product that will neutralize that higher pH product that we just applied. This aids again and loosens up a lot of that brake dust and grime. A foam wall is then applied, and that is a neutral pH. So this doesn't interfere with any of the previously applied chems in the steps. And this is the first detergent to begin the wash process. Then we go and apply lube soap to the brushes. This is a higher pH product, and it makes sure that the brushes, as your vehicle's going through, are well lubricated, removes a lot of that dirt that we just loosened up, and does so without any excess friction. And then we apply low pH foam detergent. So these are being agitated by the brushes and the wraps we just talked about, removes that loosened dirt that have built up on the vehicle's finish. And we contact all areas of the vehicle. I mentioned the front, the top, sides, the back. And these brushes are designed so that they're scrubbing, the right areas of the vehicle at the right time. The soap in this step also neutralizes the effect of that high pH, that pre-soak, right? And that soap we talked about. And then after a thorough rinsing, and we apply some of the waxes, sealants, ceramics, and then a drying agent. This really brightens up. And if the customer opted in, protects the finish of the vehicle. After this application, the vehicle is rinsed with RO water, and this helps ensure that we have a clean, dry, shiny, dry car delivered quickly and spot free.
Do you filter the rinse water, or is it just right from the tap?
No, it's a good question. We definitely do. We use reverse osmosis water. And again, that reverse osmosis process really removes, a lot of the chlorine and some of the chemicals there. We push, our reverse osmosis systems will, perform through a pre-filter. It forces water through a membrane. It removes all of those, that sediment, chlorine, etc. And then we will reuse, in addition to that, roughly about 70% of the water in the process itself.
So you take all that wastewater that's coming down and reuse that. How do you get the chemicals and get the water back clean again?
Yeah, so it's a good question. In the lion's share of our car washes, Jason, the water is recycled through a water reclaim system. And really, in this day and age, it's not just it's not the easiest to get, some of these built in certain municipalities. They want to know that, we're doing the right thing by our customers and the environment. And for us at Spotless, we always, adhere and advocate on being, as user friendly for the customer and certainly for the environment. and leave the smallest footprint, completely possible. So that as we go through and we stand up these reclaim systems, the way this is designed, that wastewater that you talked about drains off the car. And then all that tunnel that we sprayed, all the chemical applications and all that goes into a specially designed trench. And that water then moves through a settlement process. And it's similar to the way a septic system works. And this allows for that debris, that the chems, the dirt, that grit to settle out of that water. And then we take that water and we filter it and we pump it back into the car wash where it's reused in some different elements of the cleaning process, undercarriage, car, wheels, et cetera, in that tunnel. And again, I mentioned earlier, we will typically reuse 70% of the water in all of our car washes. We've got some technologies out there now that we're testing where we've gotten that number up to as high as 90+%.
Well, that's pretty remarkable. Really remarkable. My guest is Christian Seam, is the Chief Stores Officer of Spotless Brands, and you can go to one of their car washes, their Cobblestone, Okie Express, Flagship, and Ultimate Shine. You can also visit them at spotlessbrands.com. Is there a formula about how fast a car should travel through the wash? Do you look at how the speed for some cars, and is it better to go faster or slower?
Great question, Jason. There's no perfect answer to this question. Once upon a time in the very old days, with chain conveyor technology, I think there was this adage that, hey, as long as my formula is between, 80 to 120% of my tunnel length, that would suffice. The dynamic today, and we just talked about it, is, cars are not built the same, ranging from the lengths of cars. So, what we try and do is we start with the conveyor itself. And listen, technology behind the conveyor itself has been changing as well. So really, you've got your chain conveyor and you got your flat belt, and it's been migrating more to that flat belt. With a chain conveyor, you've got rollers that need to be set so that the cars have enough space in between each one so they don't run into each other. And typically, we put this distance at about 3.5 feet between cars. So we time that accordingly. And with a flat belt, there's less complexity for the customer, and it's much easier for them to drive onto. I don't need to worry about lining it up as much. I don't even need necessarily to have the tires straight. In this case, spacing can get tighter, and thus speed can be increased considerably. And we can run flat belts, 180, 200 plus cars an hour with zero compromise to that quality of wash.
Wow.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, what you're really looking for is you want the best speed that you can run, your conveyor, whether it's a chain or a flat belt, so that, the equipment and the chemicals are able to produce a clean car and not lower any quality of wash because you've increased speed. And you also don't want to slow it down so much, Jason, that maybe you're putting on too many chemicals that really you're just wasting. You don't need to, put on too much. So it is kind of that perfect balance. And we work very closely to ensure that we're adjusting those speeds to optimize that quality at the end of the day. So it's clean, dry, shiny, and fast.
And speaking of some of those chemicals, I never go into a wash and say, I want the wax, because I don't really think it works. I mean, I need to be like Biff from Back to the Future and hand rub it in 2 coats into the car, right? It can't just pour on my car and there's the wax.
I love it, and I've seen the movie like 10 times, so I'm laughing here as well because I see the vision, right?
Yeah.
So the short answer is no, don't need Biff, grinding it out right in the hood of the car. I would say, especially today, Jason, with modern ceramic products, you've got a lot more optionality, right? So when you think about some of the ceramic finishers or waxes, they're really just polymers that adhere to the surface of the car and then protect that vehicle's clear coat. And this chemical product adheres in layers. So really, the more that you use it, the more protection it's building up and offering on the surface of your car. You'll see a dynamic difference.
So I should be waxing every time I come through there. I should be waxing the whole time.
You should. And I have to call out, there's a difference here. So like you look at these different chemicals, right, within all our waxes, not just ceramic, that will really to get that shine, which what are you doing? You're just trying to prevent hazing. So Carnauba, which is typically our best wax, that offers an absolutely great shine and it doesn't haze, right? But it lacks that durability and the protection that ceramic is going to give you. Ceramic is going to give you that great shine, but it's also going to build up those layers of protection. So, the question is, do you want it shiny, or do you want it shiny and protected? And that's where that ceramic optionality has come in. That's been very popular with our customers. And we see a much greater majority opting in for that. Because again, if there's a rainstorm and I'm parked next to Jason's car and you've got it and it's built up over a series of months that you've been using it, washing frequently once a week, etc., versus me that has not, you'll immediately see a difference. And that water will be right off of that car and it will not on mine. So it's something that you just say, hey, you don't have to, take the word for it to the car wash, but you can actually see the difference in how it provides that level of protection, Jason.
All right. Well, I guess I'll tell Biff to go home then. Will you ever convince, I would think that it's more average cars that are coming through there, maybe some nicer cars, but probably you're not seeing a McLaren or a really nice Corvette coming through your car washes, right?
It's a great question. We actually see a ton of different vehicles ranging from, the 1982 Chevy Citation, right, to the McLarens and Ferraris and Lamborghinis and Rolls Royce. And listen, I would tell you that different vehicles require a different option. And so I'll give you a great example. I mentioned before, there's car washes that we run that have the conveyor chain technology. And then there's ones that we run that have a flat belt. In a chain, I don't offer the clearance for an exotic that is lowered to the ground or even a larger truck like a dually, right? To be able to use that facility because it frankly isn't designed to fit on that conveyor. In a flat belt, I've got the ability to say yes to that many more cars. And so you'll see, oftentimes in some of these enthusiast groups, they'll call out where the right car wash is that have this optionality. So I can drive, gently my exotic sports car onto a flat belt and thus that, that lowered vehicle can get a really nice finish and a nice clean out of that. In a quick way. So yeah, you're definitely seeing that now. Look, you have all types, right? And I would tell you that we've got a, kind of our own brag book, if you will, of all vehicles that have come through that are, one-offs and exotics and everything in between. And really it just helps these customers become better, and more focused advocates for us and the brand that they choose to associate with under Spotless.
Are there some cars, though, that you've seen problems with, maybe on a recurring basis, getting damaged? I asked this because my brother-in-law, who I was talking to about when I was speaking to you, and he said that he used to go to Waterway, which is another competitor around Metro Denver, but they wouldn't let him bring his older, I think it's 2005 maybe, Jeep Wagoneer, because he says that there could be some issues with those cars going through the washes. Do you have some problems or some cars that you'd say, no thanks?
So there are a small handful of vehicles that I'll tell you, as they come out, we're very quick to recognize maybe flaws in the manufacturer's design and then how to go around it. Teslas, as an example, when they first came out, were pretty notorious for every alarm, bell, and whistle going off until they introduced car wash mode. They literally have car wash mode for that reason. In the case of the Jeep Wagoneer, there's a series of years that it had the tendency to put itself out of neutral and into drive, and that really impacted the safety of the folks that were working in the tunnel. So we're pretty quick to look and say, hey, and we'll explain to the customer, hey, here's why unfortunately we can't take it, and or vehicles that have heavy modifications. I mean, we just talked about some of the exotics and so on, but there's plenty of customers that will come through with modified body kits that are aftermarket accessories that we'll go and just kind of pull that customer out and say, hey, look, this is not something that we can be responsible for, and or not advise you to go through the wash and go from there. So yeah, it's not something that is a great percentage, but if it's 1 out of 1,000 cars, it definitely it definitely is something the team is trained to deal with.
Interesting. That's interesting. My guest is Christian Seam, is the Chief Stores Officer of Spotless Brands. You might know them as Cobblestone, Okie Express, Flagship, and Ultimate Shine. Here in Colorado, we're pretty unique. It's different than some of the eastern coast states that during the winter months, you could see snow all the time, and they have that goop all the time, and not all the car washes will be open. But out here, we get, even in January, it'll be 50 degrees for a week. And so we have a chance for the snow to melt, and everybody rushes to the car washes to get all that goop off the car. And it's a good idea, but then again, you also have to mix the cold air and a warm car and warm water and maybe a cold windshield. So how do you guys deal with those kind of challenges? Because there has to be some kind of a challenge with mixing cold cars and cold air and warm water.
I think, Jason, everybody has seen those old YouTube videos where, somebody said, I have a great idea. I've got all this frost on my windshield. Let me go in and let me boil some water and throw it on the windshield. And all of a sudden it cracks. Oh, what have I done? Right. We've all seen those videos. Oh my God, that's a terrible idea. So, the short answer for us is, we don't see or have those challenges in sites that do heat the water, and it is only warmed up to about 70 degrees. And look, anybody that's jumped into a lake, in the dead of summer and the water 70 degrees, doesn't take long for hypothermia to set in, right? Most of our sites do not warm the water that's used in the wash. It is used at its ambient temperature. And, when you think about windshield design and knowing that automotive glass is laminated in a multi-step process, it's reinforced, this does not harm that glass. It is, probably goes without saying, but I'll say it, not recommended to ever put hot or boiling water on your windshield in cold weather, or any auto glass for that matter, right? But when comes, any type of a customer will come to our locations, Jason, in that cold weather environment that you described, they certainly don't need to worry about this as being a challenge when they visit any of the Spotless car washes.
I think the biggest challenge I have is during the wintertime, and I don't know if you spend any time here in Colorado, but anywhere that's shaded, even in the wintertime, it could be 30 degrees is actually fairly warm. 40 degrees is fairly warm here because the air is so dry. But if you have the shaded areas, that you still see snow, and then on the other side of the street, it's totally melted, and you're actually sunning yourself. It's just the weirdest thing. But in a car wash situation, one side of the car wash that's in the sun, it's nice and warm. But at the exit, which is in the shade, then it's all full of ice as you're leaving the car wash. There has to be some unique challenges like that in some parts of the country.
There is, and look, without heating the water to any significant degree, right? There's in the design of those colder weather sites, everything from radiant heating in the tunnels, air doors to help make sure that the warm air stays in that tunnel, in that environment, and radiant heated driveways and parking lots to ensure that we're providing the customer the ability to get out of their car and use those vacuums without worrying about slipping or falling. These are all different considerations that are taken into account, when we're standing up these locations, either from, ground up or we took over an existing car wash. We will constantly make improvements and to that process. But what I will reference back to your comment, how it's like sunny across the street and then it's cold on the other side, and just wait an hour and it'll change. Yeah. It's a great market in the example of Colorado for that reason, right? Because it offers, again, customers, the ability or the agility to clean in a multitude of different places with a lot of different options. And Colorado has been really an exceptional market for us for a lot of those reasons.
How fast is that air coming out of those blowers? Is it like hurricane force, 120 or I mean, it seems like it works okay, but I kind of wish it would give me more time under the blower to dry more of the water off.
It's true. You don't want to be that kid that, sticks their head out the window and lets the wind blow their cheeks out. You definitely don't want to do that under any of our blowers. Our blowers typically move about 4,800 cubic feet of air per minute. They're running about 190 plus miles an hour. And any of our locations, Jason, typically have anywhere between 12 to 14 plus blower units across a variety of different arches. So again, for us, we want to make sure that we are providing that options up to and including where, we'll go in and build locations or take over locations. And to your point, we will typically add, in some cases, double the number of blowers from what an existing operator had. And in some cases, we're drawing, more power than the location was originally built for, so that we'll actually have to go and do, a power up, with our local electric utility. But that's how serious we take ensuring that we have a consistently clean and dry car delivered to that customer, and not encroach on the consistency of that customer's experience. So we take it very seriously.
There you go. You probably get a free lifetime supply of car washes, right?
Like I said, when I grow up,
Yeah.
I want to be in the car wash space, buddy.
Go.
So I'm living the dream. It's it really is. Listen, customers, they really rally around, our teams. There's a lot of connections that are made on not just kind of that way, but even on a personal level. Hey, it's great to see you again, Jason. Wow, car's looking fantastic. Again, there's a lot to be said in kind of that relationship with the car wash that you count on. And for us, we take it very seriously. Again, it's the consistency of the experience for that customer. It's consistency and experience for our team members, right? That are delivering that. And ensuring that bar is always raised. We are probably our harshest critic, Jason, in the scheme of things. But it's a lot nicer to deal with a happy customer that comes in and drives out with a really clean car, as opposed to past life I mentioned, where there's not a lot of people that plan on their car breaking down, and even less that have a ton of money stashed away just for that rainy day. Right. When they need a new fuel pump. So it's a lot more fun of a business to be involved in.
Most definitely. Christian Seam, Chief Stores Officer for Spotless Brands. You might know him as Cobblestone, Okie Express, Flagship, and Ultimate Shine. Thanks a lot for answering all my silly questions. All the best, and I'm sure you're going to be seeing me at your new car wash here in Castle Pines as soon as it's finished.
I will absolutely ensure that you are part of the grand opening celebration, Jason. I've really, really appreciated this time, and certainly, any other additional opportunities, would love to reconnect. But thanks so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Again, you can find them at spotlessbrands.com, and they have stores all over the country. That was, without a doubt, I must say, one of the most interesting interviews I have ever been a part of. I never knew there was so much to know about the car wash business, and it was fascinating. All parts of it were fascinating. And it's funny that a guy who is a car wash guy isn't getting his car washed constantly. Like someone asking me, hey, why don't you go watch TV all day? No, actually, I don't. I don't even watch TV while I'm on it. And there are times I drive home in silence because I've been listening to TV too much. So... But there you go. If you have any suggestions for another transportation-related business, then and even if you don't think it's transportation-related, send it my way, and we'll see if I can get it here on the show. And you can just go ahead and contact me on all the contact links in the description of this program, including WhatsApp for you overseas listeners. All right, thanks again for being here. Thanks for listening. And until next time, I'm Jason Luber, the traffic guy. Be safe, and as always, happy motoring.